This is David Lucas, and this is in the news. Um, Today, we're going to discuss a case that's been widely publicized for quite a long time. But the case just started about 2 weeks ago, and this case is about Kyle Rittenhouse. Um, I'm filming my commentary of the event as I saw them, as I witnessed them on TV, on the internet, and all the different things I've read. And so I'm filming this under several assumptions. Number one, if you're watching this, you've probably seen or heard about the case. So I won't go into great detail about who I think Kyle Rittenhouse is as a person. I won't go into great detail about what the attorneys have said. That's not what this commentary is about. I just really want to focus on a few things. I think this case is important because I think that in America, in the divide that we find ourselves in, politically, racially, and everything about that, especially alongside with Black Lives Matter, Donald Trump, and all the other things that were circumventing or happening during that time of this shooting. There was actually a protest about someone who had been killed at the time. And Kyle Rittenhouse decided to show up with the AR-15. And I think I'm saying that's right. AR-15 is what I read and what I've seen in the courtroom, or at least what I thought I saw. Anyway, at the time, Kyle Rittenhouse was too young to have a permit for that gun. Also, his mother took him to this Black Lives Matter protest, and she dropped him off with this weapon. So he was unsupervised, and he's running around telling everyone he's an EMT. And when questioned about that in court, he's not an EMT. He said he had been to some kind of fireman's camp or some other thing, but he's not a fireman. He's not professionally anyway. And all of these things that he claimed that he was, and he was there to help protect businesses that he didn't know anything about. He was there to protect those buildings and companies. And it turned out that the building that he actually claims he was there to protect was vacant. The owners weren't there protecting the building. I believe I've come to several assumptions watching this case. One, the whole thing with Kyle Rittenhouse is a farce. It's smoke and mirrors. It's a lie. And I think he created this lie because it's acceptable in his community that you can go somewhere and protect buildings or protect businesses if you have this lie going on. If you tell the proper story, you're there to help. This was a volatile protest. Some people were actually looting and rioting during the protest. Some people were sparking a lot of tension. They would show up to these Black Lives Matters, which were peaceful protests, but they would show up to spark or incite a fight or violent acts, destroying property and this type of thing. And so I feel like Kyle Rittenhouse made this story up because this story is widely believed in his community. In his community, it's believed that if you have a gun, you have a reason to go and be a vigilante and practice things that a police officer would practice, or a fireman would practice, or a military soldier would practice. And you don't have to have the credentials or the training to back that up. Well, In his case, this situation went violently wrong. He had a few altercations with people that turned violent. And now we're in the middle of this case. And the thing that perturbed me, and I think is bothering most people that are familiar with this case, is not so much Kyle himself or the attorneys. We don't know the jury, but the judge in this case makes me feel uneasy. He has from the start. And now, given history, now, from my perspective, and this is my perspective, so I'm sharing my perspective because I want my story to be told, and that is from the perspective of an African-American man watching all the history and watching all the events that have occurred in America. I think it's fair to say, most people would think it's fair to say that the justice system does not represent me. It doesn't represent a person of color. So we can say that. I feel 100% confident in saying that the justice systems, the courts, the police, the systemic racism that runs within all of these is pretty well known. Now, there are some people who will dispute that, but far in between, most people understand that. So, but this was a situation where a young man who was underage had a weapon that he shouldn't have had, crossed the state borders into a place where he shouldn't have been, and he happened to be white. Now, when the situation unfolded, let's skip all the way down to the end. He killed 2 people, injuring others. And in this event, the people he happened to kill was also white. Okay, there's no speculation about that. They were, because they were trying to stop a mass shooting. In their minds, this was a guy out killing people with the AR-15, a very powerful rifle, and they were trying to stop whatever he was doing. But that's not the story that's being told. The story that's being told in court is the people who were trying to stop the mass shooter were the ones causing him to shoot and kill people. I don't know how they got to that leap, but that's what happened in the courts this week. Now, given that scenario, it can't be changed. This is what the prosecution and the defense have been working on. They work tirelessly on the evidence and different things like that. What I bring into question, I want to bring to your perspective, from my perspective, is that I think the judge has done everything in his power to protect Kyle Rittenhouse. So those on the right, because there's a divide, there's a left and a right. So those on the right should feel very secure because the judge has done everything he can to help Kyle Rittenhouse. Before he gave the closing instructions, just before they were wrapping up the case, the judge even dismissed one of the 6 counts against Kyle Rittenhouse. The one that says you're too young to carry a particular gun. So he threw that charge out. Now that's a given. That charge right there was a given. It was he was not of age. He did not have license to have that weapon. The weapon wasn't his. He didn't own the weapon himself. And he's carrying this weapon around. That was a given. He was going to be convicted of that. But the judge found it irrelevant and threw it out. Now he might have all kinds of reasons for doing that, but from where I sit, he didn't have the right to do that. I mean, these things should be judged by the jury and not the judge. And the judge dismissed one legal count, making the 6 counts go down to 5. Okay, so in this jury deliberation, which they're in right now, if they find him innocent, he has no charges at all, because the judge has already thrown one out that he definitely would have been convicted of. So that's not all. The judge also admonished the prosecution many times. In fact, every time he felt stirred up enough to admonish the prosecution, he sent the jury out and he brought them back in, which was very, very distracting, especially toward the end. Toward the last couple of days, he had to have done that 3 or 4 times just before the case was wrapped up. He was sending the jury in and out, in and out, in and out over things that the attorneys and himself involved had already agreed upon. But he kept bringing up different things. It was as if he was trying to interrupt the closing arguments of the prosecution. In fact, so much so, and you can see this for yourself. Now, you may dispute what I'm saying, but you can see this for yourself on the videos. There was one point where Kyle Rittenhouse took the stand, and he appeared to be crying or heaving or having some type of panic attack. And just when that happened, a few seconds after that happened, this was under cross-examination of the prosecution, the judge said, let's take a break. He sent everybody out of the courtroom. The prosecution was getting somewhere, was getting under, I felt like the prosecution was getting under Kyle Rittenhouse's skin and making him see the truth of the actions he had taken. You see, because in court, he had to watch those videos. He had to see where he was. And it's something in our mind. When you see something on video, I take a lot of videos, you see something on video, you feel as though you're there. It's a psychological thing. They use it in courts all the time. They use it in sports and different things all the time to stir in the mind, to get something concrete, to get to the truth. And of course, they're trying to get to the truth of what happened in a situation. Kyle Rittenhouse broke down. And in that moment, in that critical moment, the judge interrupted. The judge interrupted that situation. I felt like he did that intentionally every single time. Now, when I stated that online to some people on Facebook and other ones, I found that there were certain people who would laugh at that, you know, the little laughing emoji, they kind of laugh at that. The reason that people laugh or send emojis like that is because they saw it happen and they knew what that meant. And in some ways, that's a win for them because they know what the judge is playing at. Now, if you've watched any of my channels, you've heard me say this many times, and I'm going to say it again now today. You never have to agree with my opinion. I feel like my opinion is about 5% of the whole 100% that went on, and what I'm seeing and what I'm reading and what I'm reading other people's perspectives because I wasn't there. But I want you to see my perspective because my perspective is the perspective of a lot of people like me. And that's important because those people may not be anything like you. And I'm completely open to listening to anyone's perspective because I wasn't there. But I have an opinion, and my opinion is based on all the rights and wrongs and things I've done in my life and things I've experienced in my life. And I'm sure you have the same. But my opinion is not based on gun rights, Republican, liberal, Democrat, My opinion is not based on that. My opinion is based on the fact that I'm an African-American male. I've watched so many things done wrong in this country. I'd like to see them change. I don't have control over that. None of us do. But if we could come to an understanding, I think we can start moving in that direction. Now, I'm going to pose a question to you. And I want you to answer this not out of your bias, but out of your truth. If Kyle Rittenhouse happened to have been an African-American man carrying an AR-15 around town at a protest, get to the same altercation, the same illegal trouble, get into this courtroom, this specific judge, these specific attorneys, these specific witnesses. If Kyle Rittenhouse was an African-American man, think about this question. Do you think it would turn out the same? I don't.